the sections on 7.1 parabola. So we're going to go into a little bit more details of the parabola. I know we got introduced to it early on this year in chapter 3, but now we're going to go into is figuring out which way does the parabola open and the distance, and then there's other things that we need to include into the parabola as well. So let me go over then one type of the parabola that we're going to do is something like this, where we have is x minus h squared is equal to 4p and then y minus k. Now, when you take out all this hk business right here, what it looks like is something like this. It says x squared equals 4 times p and then y. Now, some things you need to know about. Whenever there's an x squared right here, you cannot have a coefficient in front of it. So whenever there's a coefficient, you have to divide it out and bring it to the other side right here. Now, on the other side, the formula is always going to be 4, and then the p is going to be a number right here. So whatever that p is, you need to figure that out, because p is going to be important, because then that's going to help us to find the distance that we need for other things that we're going to find today. So then let's go into the formula. So the formula is the vertex, which we know from previous chapter. In chapter 3, we found the vertex. That's your h and k. We've done that before, so that's the same idea as well. Now, the new thing is called the focus and the directrix. These are the new things right there. Now, there is formula for this, and a lot of times if you memorize a formula, sometimes, you get mixed up. So let me show you the concept of it, so that way you have an idea of what's going on. So we still have this vertex right here. Once I know what the vertex is, if I find what p is from this part of the equation right here, the p is going to be the distance from the vertex to the focus and also from the vertex to the directrix. So the distance of p is always the same from those point right there, and then also from here to here as well. So that's the importance of p right there. So once we know what that p is, the focus is obviously a coordinate, like the vertex right there. So you'll find the coordinate of that. So that's what this is, the coordinate. So you have an x and a y right there. And the directrix in this case is going to be a y equals. And so then in this case right here, you're going to have a y equals when you write up the directrix right there. Okay? So this is a p. Oh, also let me point out p. So if p is positive, then it's going to open upwards. And if p is negative, it's going to go downwards instead. So the focus is always in the inside part of the parabola. Just think of it as a vertex has a focus on it. And then the directrix is always the opposite of the vertex right there. So the directrix cannot be inside right here, right? It doesn't make sense. So it has to be on the outside. So, and the directrix is also imaginary. It's like an asymptote. So it is dotted on purpose. Now, what you will not draw is this line right there and this line right there. I'm just showing you what that distance from P is from there to there and there to there. Okay? So as we get into the examples, then you'll see more detail of what needs to be drawn and what you don't draw part of. All right? So now the other equation. So now, let's say you have a parabola which is something like this. Y minus k squared is equal to 4p and then x minus h. So again, if you take out the vertex, the h and k, what it looks like is then y squared is equal to 4px right there. Okay? Again, the same thing that we mentioned about previously. If there is a squared in front of it, then you should not have a vertex inside it. And if you do, then you have to get rid of it by dividing it out. The 4 is part of formula, so let's say it comes up to 12 is the answer right here. Then you need to bring out the 4 and find out what p is, because 4 times something has to give you that 12 right there. Okay? The x right there tells me also a clue or the hint is which way the parabola opens. So this is the x-axis, meaning that the parabola is going to open on the x-axis. So if you go back to this one right here, since y is single right here, then it's opening on the y-axis. This is the y-axis right here, so it's opening either up or down on the y-axis right here. So same thing with this one. If this is x, then it's going to open up on the x-axis right here, so it's opening on the left or on the right-hand side of the x-axis right there. Okay? So now let's go back to the same thing with the formula for this. So the vertex right there is still our h and k's right there. So still our h and k for the vertex right there. The focus is going to be the inside of the parabola. So that depends on whether p is positive or negative. So this part right here, let's say the focus is inside right here, then this is going to be drawn right here. And then opposite right here will be the directrix. So these are the drawings that you'll have. You have an F for the focus, you'll have a vertex, you have to have the parabola, and then you have to have is the directrix. Okay? So then from there, they'll ask us to figure out what this part is, and that's what you'll do. Now, let me also bring back to that P again. So if P is greater than 0, meaning that it's positive, it's going to open up to the positive side. Whether it be on the y-axis, so y-axis positive is up here, so that's why the positive is opening this way. Now, on the x-axis, positive is on this side of the x-axis, so if it's positive on the P, you're going to open towards the x-axis of positive. Now, if this right here says P is less than 0, then it opens negative. So on the y-axis right here, negative is down here. So the parabola is going to open this way towards the negative. And then on the x-axis is negative on this side right here. So it's going to open up towards the negative right there. Okay? So those are things that you need to know detail-wise so you can figure this out. Now, let's do some examples then. So if I have y is equal to negative 1 over 12 x squared, again, the rule said that you cannot have a coefficient, right, which is this part right here, in front of x squared right there, because that's what we mentioned up here. In front of x squared, you cannot have a coefficient. So that means I need to bring that negative 1 over 12 over to the other side right here. So how do I do that? Well, if you multiply by the opposite or the reciprocal of it, right, that'll bring it over. So then let's have is negative 12 on this side. Y is equal to x squared right there. Okay, so because the reciprocal of 1 over 12, right, isn't it 12 over 1? Yes. But you have to keep the negative right there, so this is the negative part right there. Now, formula says that I have to have is a 4 right there, and then we say 4 times something, which is a p. So in this case, 12 right there, so it's 4 times something, right, has to give me basically negative 12. So it has to be then negative 3, because 4 times negative 3 gives me that negative 12 right there, okay? So this represents P now. So P is going to be that part. And then, so we do the same thing, vertex. So we have this vertex. In this case, vertex is going to become 0, 0. Because if you have a y right here and an x right here, then normally it's supposed to have some kind of parentheses like this. So that's going to give us the hk right there. Remember, the h is always on the x, the k is always on the y. Just alphabetically, h comes before k alphabetically, just like x comes before y. Okay? So in this case, since I don't have any of that parentheses, then the vertex would have to be 0, 0. So then I start with 0, 0 on the vertex. Okay? Then let me go ahead and graph this out. At 0, 0 is my vertex. We learned that the P is negative 3. So that means it's opening up towards a negative, whether it be opening up towards a negative this direction right here or downwards right here. How do I know? Well, going back to this equation right here, if I look at this carefully, the single one is basically where it opens. So it's all about focusing about the single, right? So since y is single, that means we're opening either up or down because that's the focus part of it. So since it's negative, right, then we're opening down. So here we have is then down, something like this, down. And then we said P is a distance of 3. So from the 0 right here, I go 1, 2, 3. That's my focus now, right here. And then from the vertex, I go 3. So 1, 2, 3. And that's going to be my directrix. So again, it's an asymptote right there. So since it's not imaginary, or I'm sorry, it is imaginary. So you're going to have to do dotted lines right there. Okay? Let me put a little arrowheads right there. So I got the vertex right there. So I just need to write it up as the focus. So focus is going to be the coordinates of, let's see, 0, negative 3, right? So 0, negative 3. And the directrix is a horizontal line, so it's a y equals. So it's y equals positive 3, right? Because it's 1, 2, 3, positive 3 this direction. So y equals positive 3. That's it. That's what I need to find. Those are 3 things right there. Okay? If they ask you to find p, obviously you already found p up here. So that's going to be your p right there. But if they don't ask you, well, they should. But it's not part of the equation that you'll find on this one, nor is it on the MyMathLab. They'll just ask you to look for the graph or find the graph, write the equation, and things like that. All right, so that's example 1. So now let's go on to example 2. So example 2 is going to look something like this. And what you need to do is write an equation and then graph it out, etc. Well, this part is where the completing of the square comes in handy. So we've learned way back in the beginning that completing the square, and some of you guys were fighting it, but this is one of the main reasons of why completing the square comes in handy. So to complete the square, remember we want to identify as the x's on one side of the equal sign, and then the y will bring on the other side of the equal sign. So on this one right here, I'm going to keep my x squared plus 6x, and then I'm going to bring this 4y and the 5 over to the other side. So it's positive 4y, so we're going to have to subtract 4y. It's positive 5, so I'm going to have to subtract 5 right there. Okay? Now, next step then is to find that half of the b part, remember, and then square it. So if you need to look at your notes again in the beginning of that year that we took, then go ahead and do so, because that's the reason why we took notes right there. So half of 6 is 3, and so that's going to give us the 3 squared right here is equal to, and we mentioned in the beginning of the year that whatever you do on one side of the equal sign, you have to do exactly the same. So in this case, since it's the opposite of the equal sign right here, because I believe on completing the square when we did it in the beginning of the year, we did it all on the same side of the equal sign. So if you do it on the same side of the equal sign, if this is positive, you have to cancel it out and make it a 0 by putting it as a negative. Now, if you do it on the other side of the equal sign, it's like balancing equation. If you add on this side, so do on this side, you have to add as well. So this is going to become plus then 3 squared right here. Okay? So now we're going to go into our perfect square. So perfect square, remember, we just take the variable right here. We take the sign from here always. So whatever the sign is right here. We take the number, which is that part right there, squared. Do not take this out right here because you're going to always have to then take the square root of it and put it back in here, so it makes it more work. Now on this side right here, we just need to clean it up and simplify this. So I have is then negative 4y, and this is 9. 9 minus 5 is 4, positive 4. So again, the form that we want is that other equation. Let me flip that paper over again. Is something like this. So I have is this form right here, and I have something like this, right, where the parentheses is. So that's the form I want. So since I want that form, in this case, I could factor out a 4 on that right-hand side. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to copy this, plus 3 squared is equal to, and then we're going to take out a negative 4 right here, y, and then minus 1, right? So if I distribute that in, then you're going to have is exactly the same answer. That's how you check it. So this negative 4 times y should give me negative 4y. Negative 4 times negative 1 should give me positive 4 right there. Okay? So far we're good. We have is that parentheses that we need. But remember, in front right here, we said something about 4p. So in this case, we have the 4 right here, but we don't have is p. So what is p? It would have to be negative 1. Because negative 1 right here is not part of this 4. It is actually part of p right there. So y minus 1 right here, and then x plus 3, plus 3 squared. And then we can go ahead and draw this out. Okay? So the vertex of this is going to be your h and k. So in this case, remember the h and k has to be opposite sign. So in this case, it's positive 3. So it's become negative 3 on this one. And y is negative 1, so that becomes positive 1 right there. So negative 3, 1. So 1, 2, 3, negative 3, let's say 1 right here. So 1 right here. So that's going to be the vertex right there. Okay? Then I know the p is negative 1, so I'm going to label that right there. P is negative 1, so that means it's opening negative, whether it be going downwards or to the left. But how do I know which direction it's opening? Well, where is the single variable? Or the single, so it's a single variable, which is a y in this case, right? Because x has x squared right there. So since y is a single one, we're going to focus on the y. So it's on the y-axis right here. We're either opening upwards or downwards, and p tells me it's negative, so we're opening downwards right here. So this is downwards right here. Okay? So then p is 1. So then from this 1 right here, I go down 1, which then becomes a focus right here, and I go up 1, but now it becomes the directrix right here. So that's the directrix right there. Okay, so then writing the equation or the coordinates. So the focus coordinate is going to be -3, 0. So that's my focus right here. So focus, oh, I think I actually set it up here. Haha. Okay, so let's go back here. So -3, 0 is the focus. The vertex we said was -3, 1. So -3, 1. And we said P was -1. So -1. And the directrix. So the directrix is this part right here. So that was y equals 2, right? Because this is +1 and this is going to be +2. So y equals 2. That's it. So all of this information is what you need to find from there. Okay? So again, let's go over that again just to make sure. So I did my completing of the square right here. So once I do my completing the square, I go to down here. We need to find out what P is. So 4 is always going to be part of formula. So whatever is left over basically is your P right there. So in this case, if P is that, then that's going to help us to find the distance from the vertex to the focus and then the vertex to the directrix. The vertex is going to be found from your H and K right there. So that's my H and K that we found from here. And so then the P tells me it's negative and it's going to be on the Y because Y is a single one. So it's opening either up or down. And it's going to be down because this P is negative, so it's downwards this way. And P is a distance of 1 right there, so just from the vertex, this is the easy part, I just go down 1 and up 1 to figure out the rest of them. So then the top part of this becomes the directrix, and the part that's inside the parabola becomes the focus right there. Okay? All right. Then example 3. So now example 3, let's say they gave us these coordinates instead and they ask us to write the equation. So that means you have to graph it out and then figure out how to write the equation. So vertex is 2, 0. So let's see, vertex is 2, 0. So something like this. This is going to be my vertex. And I would always label it so I know which one is which. And then the focus is 3, 0. So this is a focus of 3, 0 right here. So that makes it easy because then I can figure out what my P is because P is the distance from here to here, right? So P is going to equal to 1. So if I know the P is equal to 1 from the vertex, I would have to go the opposite direction, which is this is equal to 1 to figure out what my directrix is. So then I know that the parabola opens always towards the focus. So if this is the vertex right here, then it has to open this way because it's opening towards the focus, right? Because it's focusing this direction right here, okay? So once I know that, then I can write the equation. So the equation is, put a little equal sign right there. It's the single one is where it's opening. So it's opening on the x-axis, so the single has to be on this side right here, which then becomes a 4p single. And then on this side, then obviously is going to be y, and then I'm just going to put something, I don't know what that is, squared right there, okay? And then also on this one right here, we could, well, let's do the h and k. Oops, the h is on the x right here. So h, and this would have to be the k. Okay, so we could form it this way. So this becomes the generic equation, and then from there we just fill in everything that we know. Well, I know the h and k's is a vertex, which is this part right here, and the vertex is 2, 0. So 2 would have to be on the x right here, and then 0 we don't have to put on the y, so y is going to be just squared right here, equals, and I'm going to leave this right here, and then x. Now, since it's +2, we have to do the opposite side. So it's -2 on this side. And then we have to figure out is where this P in this case. So P is the distance from here is 1, right? So it's just basically 1 times 4. And so that's going to just become 4x minus 2. And then that's your final answer right there of writing the equation. So they'll ask you to do some of this on the MyMath lab as well, writing the equation after given some information. Okay? All right, go ahead and do the classwork.